Pesach and pre-Pesach shir, where we will go on a lightning bolt through the different things to expect for Pesach and Seder. I will speak slowly so that we can cover a lot, but that it also be understandable. So we're going to start with the things that should be getting taken care of now and getting into Pesach, and I'll help direct you to some resources because it's not the goal here to make sure that I have every answer, but sometimes it's just having access to all of the resources that are available. We are currently in the month of Nisan, and in this month, some of the things that we can do are give charity to help people afford food for Pesach. It's called Ma'us Chitim, and that's an important thing to engage with doing, is keeping people happy for Pesach. It's pretty much for every holiday is the mitzvah to give tzedakah. This one we're focusing on specifically have to have money for the matzah. Matzah is the biggest mitzvah we have in our day and age because we don't have the temple standing. The next big thing that will come up is the Shabbos before Pesach is going to be called Shabbos Hagadol. That Shabbos is the one coming up because you kind of have this one, and then you have Shabbos Erev Pesach, which we don't have time to do all the Shabbos Hagadol stuff. Now, there's called Shabbos Hagadol because on the 10th of Nisan during the Exodus, the Jewish people took all their sheep and brought them into their houses for the Korban Pesach, and they are focused on doing that, but they had it several days ahead of time. So for this year, what happens is that we're so busy on Shabbos Erev Pesach just trying to have meals that this weekend is technically where the drasha and all that stuff happens, and we kind of commemorate that event with that experience. So, but in the meantime, there should be focus on getting ready for Pesach by buying Pesach foods and possibly also koshering the kitchens. So, what I'm going to focus on right now is koshering the kitchen and selling chametz and a little bit about foods and medications. So, let's talk about koshering the kitchen. So, koshering the kitchen requires you to basically be meticulous in doing that. You want to make sure that it is cleaned well and that there are no more chametz items in and around the space that you are using. So that's one number thing to do. So the number one thing to do is, if you're not koshering it, is to put stuff away. And you can clean them, but you don't want to leave them out and available so that way they can become used on Pesach. So try to put them away. And that's the number one thing. Let's talk about materials that can be koshered. So for the most part, things that are made from wood, metal, and stone can be kosher. Things made out of earthenware, everyone agrees can't be kosher. So if it was used even one time for chametz, it really needs to be kosher for Pesach. So if you use a bread knife to start cutting bread, you need to kosher it, okay? But technically, it would need to be cutting a warm cake or warm bread because you need heat to transfer the flavors sometimes. So things like that could technically be a problem. Or if you took a spoon and you stirred the cholent that has barley in it, would be the real issue. Okay, Ashkenazim tend to not kosher plastic utensils, mostly because they don't hold up under it. But that's something. If you have a real question about plastics and other such things, you can talk to your Rav about it, figure out what that is. The Ashkenazim and the Sephardim disagree about glass. Ashkenazic custom is not to kosher glass for Pesach. The Sephardic custom is glass is not absorbent. So that seems to be pretty much the case with all of it, including for things like Pyrex and Duralex. However, some Sephardim are strict when it's used to come in contact with direct heat. There are two manners of koshering things that are made out of metal and wood and stone that we were talking about. So one way is to use hagala. So most of that is, hagala is basically the immersion of the utensil you want to use in water. So that's hagala, okay? The other way you could kosher something is if it's never immersed into another pot that's boiling, is use iroi. That's taking the water from that hot boiling pot and pouring it on something. So the main thing to understand is that you have to know what type of koshering system to use for your various utensils. So the OU has a very good guide in their OU koshering guide, and they have a picture of a kitchen and different things in there, what you can and can't kosher. So some things are difficult to kosher. The question is how quote unquote pashki do you want to be with koshering some of your utensils? For example, a lot of people have the small utensils, they just keep them for Pesach, things like food processors and egg beaters and mixing tools, things like that, which are hard, quote unquote, hard to clean. They tend to have one just for Pesach. Okay, now certain things that require the higher level of koshering, which is called libun. So that's where you basically something get it as high and hot as you possibly can. You can kosher all types of stuff like that. So if you're koshering a grill, or you're the skewers for the grill, or a griddle that's not coated in Teflon, you could use libun. You want to use libun for that, and that's how so many people in the United States kosher their ovens, and as well as to use self-cleaning. The temperature has to get high enough so that way when you touch fire to it, the touch paper to it, the paper would catch fire. Okay, so things like your stove top, you leave the grate on top of it, you turn the flame all the way up, and it koshers it. Same thing with the oven. Toaster ovens is a little bit more difficult because they often don't get hot enough, and things of smaller appliances that get hot, we tend to try to not use them. But if you need to do them, definitely ask and have somebody look at it. The countertops, some people just cover countertops. We can kosher pretty much every type of material nowadays. There was once a time when people didn't kosher formica because it was plastic based. No one has that anymore. There's a few different really easy ways to kosher countertops. Most people try to use it where you basically get the heat sizzling on it. So you can either take a hot brick over the countertop and pour hot boiling water over it, so it creates a sense of being in a cleavishon and being in a initial fire pan that's over the fire. Or what you can do is take something like a hot iron and pass it over hot water. Or you can take a hot steamer that puts out hot water out of it over the surface, will work as well because the water gets super heated. The things like the sinks and stuff like that, you can kosher with just pouring hot water all over it, but you have to get it over every part of the surface. So sometimes it's good to use a boiling power washer if you have one of those. So things like your food processor, you want to recover, you want to replace. You will want to also probably cover your table because koshering tables is generally difficult. Microwaves, people boil out the cup on the inside of it. So that's all. That is a lot of what needs to go on. And our custom is to make sure you do all the koshering before Erev Pesach. Especially this year, can't do it Erev Pesach because it's Shabbos, but that's what the custom is. Okay, so that's kind of like a quick rundown of koshering your kitchen. So you also want to make sure that you get only kosher Pesach foods. You can always get the OU list and other lists of things that are problematic. So the only time that you really need to be worried is when you have a pet that only eats a chametz-based food. You would have to have a non-Jew go ahead and own your animal and own the food for the duration of Pesach. You can't have non-Jew have chametz in your house and you keep the animal. So either get your animal onto Pesach food or board the animal with somebody else who will take care of it, who's not Jewish, and feed it the regular food source on Pesach. When it comes to medications and things that are not food products like soaps, can an electric iron that has steam burst options be used to make steam over a surface? Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, and you can either do one of two ways. You can do the steam burst, but I would use that along with actually just taking and spraying hot water over the surface, or just using a hot steamer that gets the water to boiling inside of it, and then puts the water over the surface as well. Some people don't like it if it's not 212 when it comes out of the thing. It doesn't have to be 212 when it comes out of it because you're going to do E-Roy over it anyway. So as long as it was boiled and then it carries this, and the steam isn't steam but actually leaves water behind, is what we're talking about in those cases. Okay, So things like your medications and stuff that contains alcohol, I recommend looking at the lists that are provided. You have the OU lists and other medication lists. So if you're not sure, you can always call one of the major agencies or talk to your doctor to see what's in the different things, and then talk to your local rabbi. But just be aware to look into that. Okay. Kitniot, there are different customs regarding kitniot between Ashkenazim and Sephardim. Ashkenazim avoid kitniot altogether, even if it was handled like it was matzah products or products that could be used like matzah. And there are exceptions. For example, if someone has certain types of gluten allergies or other types of allergies, and they can't avail themselves of regular products or gluten products on Pesach, sometimes there is leniency for that, but discuss your case before Pesach, find out what you can and cannot use. Some things are acceptable, some things are not. Some things just have kitnios, some things have chametz. You need to make sure you know which one that you're working with. But you want to make sure that you get into selling your chametz. So selling your chametz will be done through your local rabbi. You need to really focus on getting a good document to do that. During right around the pandemic time, we had some difficulty because people didn't want to do a lot of interacting, and I was very fortunate to team up with some good rabbanim where we did a really good shtar mechira for that. We still use it. Some of the shuls still use it to this day, and we had to edit it a little bit because from the first year there were a lot of grammatical errors in it, but we have it and it lists a lot. You want your document to be as specific as possible. You also want to make sure that the rabbi selling the chametz knows to have a proper transaction with the non-Jew. They have to have the handshake, they have to have the document, they have to have cash considerations. All those are covered in the sale, and that's a separate document they have with the non-Jew. Don't make a joke out of selling your chametz. Please don't leave challah in your freezer. Like try to get, if you don't actually need it, try to get rid of it and donate it. But other things that like don't try not to keep around loaves of bread. Try to get rid of those, but you can keep around everything else that you're not sure about that has chametz, or things like some crackers, or if you have cookies lying around. If you can get rid of it, great. But definitely sell your chametz. Try not to make a joke out of the mechiras chametz. Like some people, they have big warehouses full of things that they can't clear out before Pesach, so it's understandable that they have to go ahead and make a different type of sale. But just for you yourself, try to take that to heart, that we're supposed to get rid of chametz for Pesach. Okay, so if you have anything that is chametz that's being entrusted to you by non-Jews, you need to make sure that your agreement that does not require you to be responsible for it for Pesach. You need to absolve yourself from it ahead of time. So that's really important. Okay, but in terms of getting ready for Pesach itself, you need to make sure that you have, you want to learn about, make sure you're prepared to set the Seder table. Okay, so here's some things that you'll need for the Seder table. Okay, so you have to do all of these things ahead of Pesach this year, ahead of Erev Pesach this year, because of the fact that Erev Pesach is Shabbos. So you need to make sure that you've checked all the romaine lettuce leaves for maror. If you're going to use horseradish, you need to have that grated as well. And you shouldn't be doing that on Pesach. You also want to make sure that you grate the apples and things like that for the charoses, also before Shabbos. All those things need to be taken care of. Also, make sure that on Thursday or Friday in your Pesach kitchen, you also cook the eggs and roast the zroa, which you're using for the lamb or chicken shank to use for the plate. Those things need to be taken care of ahead of time. Also, make sure you have enough of everything. Have enough matzah, have enough wine, and you want to have enough wine for everybody to drink 4 cups. You can also use grape juice. There's some people who are picky that when they get their grape juice, that the grape juice not be pasteurized and not have sulfites in it. You can find that, but for the most part, all the grape juice, the kosher grape juices out there is acceptable for that. So again, for the Seder plate, you want to make sure you have you have matzos. So it's 3 matzos for your plate. Okay, 3 matzos. You want your maror, which is going to be either the horseradish or the romaine lettuce. Some people also use endive. You also want to make sure you have something for karpas, okay? And the karpas is a brei ha'adamah food. Some people like to use potato. My long-standing custom was to use parsley. Parsley is mentioned in a few different places by a lot of Eastern European achronim. Some people use different things. They use different. Some people use celery, for example. But that's what you want to make sure. Something that's green that kind of represents springtime. But that's only for the karpas. So you also want to make sure you have this. Oh, I forgot to mention. I also want the salt water prepared ahead of time. Although you can make that right at the Seder if need be. That doesn't take long. But some people prepare that ahead of time. Salt water for dipping the karpas in. Also on the Seder plate, you also want the charoses there as well. That should be made. Some people have said they're not sure what needs to be in the charoses. The Shulchan Aruch does bring down that you really need to have apples and cinnamon and wine. Those seem to be the most important things because they give it that mortar type flavor and the reddishness of it. But different countries have different recipes, so it's not important. It's that the Talmud itself doesn't actually tell you what the recipe is. Talmud, they definitely weren't using apples because that comes into popularity much later in European lands. It's much more likely that they're using things similar to what different people in that region would use, which would be like dates and oranges and red wine and cinnamon, but not so much apples. But the Shulchan Aruch mentions those things because by his time those things were much more common. Yeah, the nuts also, the walnuts and the filberts and those type of things are also in there to help make it more feel like a mortar. Where was I? Okay, you see, I was still in the middle of the Seder plate. And you need two cooked foods on it, which are the lamb shank, the zroa, and you also need to make sure you have eggs that are cooked as well. Okay, so you want to have the eggs in there. You have to have, because those are the two cooked items you want to have for the Seder plate as well. Okay, and there's 3 or 4 customs for the plate. The Ramah, the Rav Moshe Isserles brings down that you want to have it set up so that way you don't have to pass over a mitzvah. So you have the matzahs in front of you, and then you have the karpas and the salt water, and then you have the maror and the charoses, and after that you have the zroa and the egg. So that's how the Ramah would set it up. The Ari is slightly different, and he doesn't have the matzahs on his Seder plate. He has them set up according to what they signify. Many Seder plates follow the Ari lineup, and the Ari lineup moves. It moves the maror, and it has one place for the maror and one place for the chazeret. So they have 2 different places: the horseradish and the romaine. So it adds that, and it puts them opposite the karpas, and the salt water gets moved out of the way. And those are on the plate next to the charoses, the zroa, and the beitza. So that's how that sets up in the Ari. And the gra is different. He only has 2 matzahs, and he doesn't hold the whole don't pass over a mitzvah thing. So they definitely have a few different. You have to have a few things there afterwards. So those are all different possibilities, especially nowadays when people bring out giant bags of matzah or boxes of matzah and bags of maror. Having the setup of the Seder plate isn't as important as it was many centuries ago when they just brought out a little table for you. So that's kind of the getting ready for the Seder. Now let's talk about the matzah for the Seder night as well. Okay, there's a lot to cover, so we're kind of jumping through different things. So I haven't even gotten to the prayers today, which also have some interesting rules. I don't know if we're going to get to that now. I want to make sure I cover sort of the important things for the Seder. So you want to make sure you have all kosher Pesach Seder plates. You also have to have nice plates for the Seder, nice cups. Let's talk about measuring the matzah and the maror. Okay, but first let's talk about the matzah. You need shmura matzah for the Seder. You can't just go to the store and buy the kosher Pesach box. So you should be doing that. It's not the end of the world. You need to get the shmura matzah. Even if it's machine matzah, as whatever shape and flavor that it needs to be shmura, because it's the main point is that the flour has been washed from the moment it was harvested. That's called shmura matzah. Kosher for Passover matzah suffice with making sure that there's no leavening from the moment that the flour is ground. However, the Talmud requires, and most Rishonim agree with this opinion, or many of them do, that you want to have the flour watched from the moment it's harvested from the ground. So while it's still in the kernel, while it's still in the germ, and then you watch it through that whole process. So that's what we do. You want to get shmura matzah. That's the number one thing. And I mentioned briefly about the wine and the grape juice. Just to recap, red wine is preferable for the Seder. Doesn't have to be hugely alcoholic. You don't have to get drunk at the Seder. There's no requirement for that. In fact, it's the opposite. You don't want to get drunk at the Seder. Okay? So you can use grape juice, or if you want to have white wine, if you just put a few drops of grape juice in there to redden it, would be great. Or a few drops of red grape juice to redden it. And that's okay. There's no concern about coloring food. We don't say there's coloring by foods. There's no tzvia ba'oichlin on Shabbos and Yom Tov, so you can do that. It's a nice little thing that you can do. Let's talk about how much you need to eat. Okay, now we know what kind of matzah you need to buy and what kind of drink you need to get. So for the 4 cups, you need to drink. You need to have a revius. Okay, that's the requirement. Now, how much do you have to drink? You must drink that full revius. However, many people say you have to drink the majority of a revius. Now, if your cup is bigger than that amount, how much is revius? Okay, let's talk about that. So it goes anywhere between 2.5 fluid ounces, which is about 75 cubic centimeters, to about 5.1 cubic centimeters, which is about 150. So it's all over the place. The problem is whether or not you have the stringency of having to double the sizes or not, which is a shear in and of itself, which someone sent me one. Some rabbi talked about it for an hour and 15 minutes about how to measure the size of an olive, how to measure the size of an egg. Now, so I generally follow the opinion from Rav Moshe Feinstein that it's around 3.5 fluid ounces. That's what I usually tell people. That's also brought down in Rav Shimon Eider's book. I'm sorry, I think that's 3 ounces. Is that 3 ounces or 3.3? So in Rabbi Eider's book, he brings down from Rav Moshe Feinstein that. So what happened was that Rav Moshe didn't measure it himself. So there's a dispute. That's what I missed over here. So Rabbi Eider's book, it's in chapter 20 over here. And each cup must be filled completely, but in a large cup, you can just drink the majority of the portion of that. And can you drink more than 1 cup at a time if desired? Okay, good question. We'll get back to that in a second. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so there was actually a dispute about what Rav Moshe did, and so that's why it's a little bit different between some of his students. So it's somewhere between 3 ounces and 3.3 ounces. Okay, so it's something around there. Okay, something in between there. And if you were ill, you could get it as low as almost 2 ounces. All right, and so that seems to be that one. But because we double up the sizes, it's probably closer to 3 or 3.3. So there's a little bit of dispute. What happened was that they did a lab test at one point called the Halachos of Kazayas, which was from Rabbi Yisrael Bodner, and they measured it. And so the problem was that they were trying to figure out how many ounces were inside of the egg, meaning the egg with the shell on it, and how much it displaced. So that was kind of the problem. Everyone's had slightly different eggs. People thought the medium egg and the large egg. So there's that. Now, a couple things. So I have a few questions here about what to do with the actual drink itself. You may add water, but only a little bit because they dilute our wine. It used to be you could mix our old wine with water. It was much thicker, more like port wine. I've actually had port wine for Pesach just for that reason, because it really feels like Pesach when drinking port wine. But regular wines are diluted a little bit. It still needs to taste like wine, so you probably can add at most half an ounce to it, maybe an ounce. But as you mentioned, if you have a cup larger than this 3 ounce, if you have like a 6 or 8 ounce cup, if you fill it all the way up, you should still drink the majority of it. And some people say you should also drink enough that it should get the revius in that drink as well. So it's like two things. It's drink the majority of your cup and drink enough so that you get a revius in there. So as long as you get a couple of ounces into it, getting 3 is better. So if you want to be the most stringent, the Chazon Ish and Rav Chaim Kanievsky, they hold you should drink 5 fluid ounces. So if you get an 8 ounce cup and you drink the majority of your 8 ounce cup, you're gonna get that. So you're gonna drink about 5 ounces, right? Because more than the majority will be about 5 ounces. And especially since other people are somewhere between 2 and 5, it's not a whole lot about it. But you should try to drink it all in one shot because it's not a lot of time to sort of sip it and drink it. Okay, so matzah is a little bit different. The same problem happens with matzah. And we don't know, some people double the shiurim, the sizes of them, some don't. So, so basically, in those same books that I mentioned before, with the Keziah's book and the Hilchos Pesach book, and the Klishas Rav Moshe, the machine matzah, it's somewhere between 2/3, 2/3, 4/5, or 1 machine matzah. Okay, so and it's because what happened was that the sizes of the matzahs changed. So look at the side of your box and see what the size is of your machine matzah. If it's 33 grams, then you need to get 22, so that would be 2/3. If it's a little bit less than that, the idea was you need to get 22 grams. So 22 grams was the measurement that they came up with Rav Moshe. So that is the amount that you want to try to get. So if you can figure out how much it is on the side of it, you're good. With a hand matzah, you have to eat more because hand matzahs are much thinner. Okay, so and because of that, you need to get much more in there. Now that's only for motzi matzah and for afikomen. For korech, you can cut that in half. You can cut that amount in half. 1 gram for each Hebrew letter. I like that. Motzi matzah. I like that. Where was I? Okay, so that is what they recommend. So it's because you're using the flat ones. If you're using soft Sephardi matzahs, many Sephardic poskim take the approach that it needs to be 27 grams. This is quoted in the Kaf HaChaim, and it's also quoted in the Yalkut Yosef as well. And so they he held a little bit differently, but they quote it. So some people would argue that it was 29. Some people argue that it was 27. And let me see, where's my note for Bovad Yosef? Okay, yeah, it's something along those about there should be fine. So in one of those sizes. So, but also if they're using soft matzah. It's a good way to remember that. Okay, so that is how much you eat for the matzah over there. And that's some of the rules of the Seder over here. Okay, and let's see what else. Okay, you need to have 4 cups of wine. We talked about the matzah, and I have a couple of minutes left. So let me just talk briefly about, well, I mean, there's a lot of intricacies of the Seder itself. We talked about the Seder, and so I think I'll make another class that will be going over the laws of the Seder, how to do that, because there's a lot of little intricacies about when to take the stuff on and off the table. But for right now, you kind of know, for this class, for its purposes, you kind of know how to get ready for Pesach. And we talked about setting up the Seder. And I'll see if there's interest in doing an actual one for the Seder itself. What is done with Elijah's wine that is not drunk, unless he comes? So you can pour it back into the bottle. So that's one thing that you can do. Someone can also, during the 4th cup, they can drink it. And drink it all, that would be fine, because as long as you can finish the 4th cup with as much wine as you want after that. But if Eliyahu Hanavi shows up, leave him his kos. Now the kos of Eliyahu is a much later addition. I should have a class on the Koshel Eliyahu. But yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting one because it's not mentioned in the Talmud. It's a much later custom. All right, I think we will hold it here for today. Thank you for joining us, and we will see everyone next time.